Fuck it.
Yeah,
I don't
there
need
we
that
go.
shit.
There we go. Okay, so we were just looking up the Pacific Rim trailer that dropped today. Trailer that was shown at WonderCon during the panel, and my God, this movie. Just seeing it today on my tiny little iPhone screen, being on a huge screen with great surround sound. So I know this movie is just going to be awesome when we see it in the theater, because we're all three of us are going to see it. But
Yeah, it's got my money already. So yeah, but you're yeah, man. I'm really excited about seeing this. It's it's big monsters, it's big robots, excuse me. It's Guillermo del Toro. What more could you possibly want in a movie? And you know it's going to be smart. It has to be. Like, what else is it going to be,
Yeah, exactly right, man. The thing that he kind of to go into the things they talked about on the WonderCon panel, which you can find on the Movie Nerds Network channel if you're so inclined. And the quality's not that great because look on the playlist. It should be on the playlist WonderCon. But one of the things Guillermo del Toro talked about in the panel was how they tried to build this the as much as they could with the sets, and try to make everything feel real and practical. And I think that's really going to help with this movie. Just with any movie with CGI is always going to be better if it has that grounded reality to it. But I just hope that this movie kind of lives up to the hype, because I'm getting pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm. There's not a lot to say that really just doesn't get me excited already. I'm just so ready to see it. It's like everything from my childhood being pushed onto the big screen in this exciting, action-packed, over-the-top, really awesome movie that I just can't wait. I'm dying to go see this movie.
I mean, come on, any movie that has a freaking robot using an oil tanker as a bludgeoning device is good in my book. And it's so true. Like this is just that alone, that visual alone is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But when I first saw it, I was just like, when I first saw the preview, I was like, oh man. I was like, this is so awesome. I wonder who's directing this. And then it's one of my favorite directors, and I was like, sold, sir. You have earned my money. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because I think I've seen almost all of Guillermo del Toro's movies in theater. So it's kind of like a tradition for me. And he shares something with me and you. You know that?
Oh yeah?
Yeah. You want to know what that is?
Yes, I do.
His favorite horror movie is The Thing.
John Carpenter's?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I know Guillermo is a big practical effects guy, and he loves monsters and monster movies. Those are like, I know from seeing interviews he's done and reading stuff he's talked about, that's like one of his passions. It's just monsters in general. He loves the obscure and things of that nature. I mean, and it really shines in his movies, especially like you look at the Hellboy movies, but the second Hellboy movie in particular, which has some really really far out there designs, and same with Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah. Pan's Labyrinth is one of my favorite films.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty great. And the thing that's awesome about this is Guillermo del Toro really, really got to play with this movie. Like he was saying during the panel, they got to design like 13 monsters, which they're called kaiju in the movie, which is Japanese for monster, I guess. And then they got to design 13 Jaegers, which are the robots. And so I think Guillermo del Toro really got to kind of, get a lot of money and just play in this world. I know this is his first $200 million movie, and I think it's completely justified,
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can't go wrong. It's like investing in something that you know is going to make money. It's like investing $1 million in Hershey's to make chocolate. They're going to do it. So,
and it's going to sell.
Yeah, exactly. man, if people don't go see this movie, I think they'll be missing out. Like, anybody who doesn't seem interested in this movie, I have to question their their logic. But
yeah, it's pretty much going to be a spectacle movie. I think that's really the only way to describe it. But I hope it holds up as far as like a story and scripting level, which I have faith, because Guillermo del Toro, even in the Hellboy movies, is he tells a pretty good story in those movies, despite their smaller but still big budget. Smaller than Pacific Rim. Okay, so as you guys can see, Kurt has instantly magically joined us. So a movie that I just recently watched is a movie called Side by Side. Now, this is a new documentary film. It's narrated, produced by Keanu Reeves. He also does all the interviews in the film. And it's a movie that kind of tries to show both sides of what's been going, a big debate that's been going on in the film industry. And this is, of course, film versus digital. As some of you guys may or may not know, digital cameras and digital intermediates, such as like digital editing and color timing and things like this, have kind of taken over the old ways that Hollywood used to do things in the 70s and 80s and before that with film. And it's really interesting, I thought, because it doesn't necessarily answer the question, but it kind of tries to give both sides of the equation on this one, It tries to show both. It's more of a comparison and contrast essay, if you will, But one thing that I really enjoyed as a fan of filmmaking and as a fan of directors is seeing all the people that get interviewed in this movie. I mean, you have every notable, famous, huge Hollywood director in this movie. You have James Cameron in this movie. You have George Lucas, who has a significant amount of interview time in this, as he's a big fan of digital cameras and digital effects, obviously, as we've known through the Star Wars movies. But you've got the Wachowski siblings in here. I mean, you've got Steven Soderbergh. I mean, the list just goes on, and I'm just barely, naming a few of the people. David Fincher is a really great one in there. So overall, I would recommend this to anyone that's just a fan of movies, because it kind of takes these real technical terms, like the way that film, like towards the beginning of the movie, they kind of explain the way that film cameras work and the way that light hits the lens and reflects and emulsifies, but they do it in a way that that the average person who knows nothing about the movie making process can understand, And so that's why I say that I think I would recommend this to anybody who watches movies, because it's really an interesting debate in it. And again, it doesn't try to answer these questions. It just tries to present a case for both sides. So I don't know. You guys you two especially need to see this, because it's on Netflix. You have no reason not to watch it. So with that being said, was there something, Kurt, you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I've been watching Bates Motel lately. The show is really good. I was actually really apprehensive about the show, because Psycho's probably one of the greatest films ever made, and at least for horror. And you had very questionable casting with Freddie Highmore as the young Norman Bates. Norman Bates is one of those characters that you really cannot mess up. And while Highmore isn't perfect for the role, I think physically he's just right. He's got the right amount of insanity. He's got the right amount of intrigue to keep the character interesting. And Vera Farmiga is just outstanding here as Norma Bates. And it does this really cool I don't know how to put this. It does this really cool retelling of Psycho, because it takes place in the modern day. So they have like cell phones. So in a way it's retelling Psycho from the beginning. And I'm hoping eventually that there's going to be a season where we get a whole movie form of Psycho, only stretched over a full season. Because I think that'd be cool. But I highly recommend Bates Motel to anyone who is a fan of movies, about Hitchcock, just to see whether you feel it is actually good enough to be to count as a remake, if you will, of Hitchcock itself. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Tommy, but I was a little apprehensive about this one when I first heard about it, just like Kurt, you know. So it's kind of good to hear that it's actually okay from, you know, what I can tell.
I actually have been watching it myself. I'm hooked on it. So yeah, it's doing a really phenomenal job. I've really been impressed with it. You know, I can agree with everything that Kurt pretty much said. You know, I really like the mom character. I think she really sets the whole show on fire pretty much. But everything else, I mean, you know, the modern day setting, like at first I was kind of confused because I didn't know if they were trying to have like a modern day old timey kind of mashup, and then I didn't really know if that was what they were going for. And then I kind of just started to discover that, you know, that it was just a modern day, and the Bates themselves are just like old fashioned. So, you know, it's kind of, in a sense, it's kind of like old fashioned family stuck in a new world too, if you think about it. But yeah, I really agree with everything Kurt says. You know, they're doing a really good job. You know, I hope that they go with everything that he pretty much hopes happens too. So it's something to really watch. I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, that's awesome, guys. One quick thing I wanted to ask. Well, I guess I don't know. It's kind of related to Bates Motel, but the true question is: does this kind of erase the memory of the sequels and the prequels to, and of course the movie that shall not be named by Gus Van Sant? Does it kind of erase the memory of that for you guys, or do you still kind of feel that the weight of those horrible sequels bearing down?
I think eventually that it might, but it's going to take more than just one whole season. It's going to take like a really phenomenal show as a whole to just really push all that garbage out that we got from Anthony Perkins after the Hitchcock film, and then from oh my God, that movie with Vince Vaughn in it.
I feel like those movies weigh nothing to me because it's kind of like, you know, Jurassic Park 3. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't ever have to watch them again. They don't really mean anything to me. No, it doesn't. It's just a whole bunch of it's the Voldemort theory. You just don't name it, and it just eventually disappears. I think the show is such its own thing that I feel like I don't even compare to those sequels and remakes just because they're not the same to me.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. That's cool, dude. I mean, I've never seen any of the sequels past 2, so and then again, 2 was a long time ago, and even then, as a child, I thought it was pretty bad. So, and of course the remake. But I think that's enough on Bates Motel. So Tommy, was there a certain movie that you saw that you wanted to discuss?
Yes, this past weekend, I had the absolute privilege of watching Zero Dark 30. And if anybody out there has yet to see Zero Dark 30, you are missing out on just a phenomenal movie. It's one of my favorite movies of this year so far, even though it was out last year or, you know, close to the beginning of the year. But, you know, I watched it twice, and the first time I watched it, I really focused on it and I really paid attention to it, and, you know, I had to stop one or two times, so I didn't feel like I got the whole movie as a whole. So I came back and I waited till everyone was asleep. I turned the lights down and I cranked the sound up, and I just really enjoyed everything that was this film. And the movie, a lot of people say that the last 30 minutes is just this big payoff to everything that the movie was, but really the movie was phenomenal, from the unexpected bombing to just seeing, the woman character, just seeing her and how she's handling all this and, dealing with the things she's dealing with. And you can really tell, isn't Jessica Chastain? We had this conversation last night, me and Kurt did. Yes. Yeah. Jessica Chastain does a really good job of showing you how emotional and just how distraught and how, everything that she feels about finding this guy, and how everybody is just telling her that her leads are garbage and that they don't exist and she needs to move on to something else, and how she just never gave up. And it's a really good movie, and I'd recommend it to anybody, and the last 30 minutes, it really is, it's really a big payoff to everything else that the movie already did really well. So
before we continue here, Kurt, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this movie's been out for a while. It's out on DVD. So I think we should just go ahead and talk spoilers on this one, because it's kind of hard. You said a lot of good things, Tommy, but it's kind of hard to talk about this movie, even though it's based on real life events. So I'm just gonna call it here. Everyone watching, spoilers for Zero Dark 30. If you haven't seen this movie, why haven't you seen it? Go watch it and then come back and watch us talk about this. So Kurt, I want to know your thoughts about the movie.
I absolutely love Zero Dark 30. If anyone reads my reviews, they would know that it is my best movie of 2012. I think Catherine Bigelow is probably one of the top 5 filmmakers alive, at least as far as recent movies. And along with Her Locker, this movie is a really good war movie. It's not really about war. It's more about the people that fight these wars that we throw them into. And this is probably the best way you could tell the story of the search for Osama bin Laden, because it's not really all about SEAL Team 6. Like, there is a 12-year struggle to find out where this man was, and it's told in such a way from the beginning. Like, it kicks you off right into a torture sequence, so it immediately throws you into the hell of what is going on in this situation. And then eventually you get thrown into more situations. Like, there's a dinner where they get bombed, and it comes out of completely nowhere, and it's terrifying. And then they finally find a big lead, and they give him all this money, and they tell him, hey, come here, and we'll let you through all our checkpoints. Well, then that goes to shit, because people in the team die, because he turns into a suicide bomber and just blows up the car. And I mean, we don't know how much of that stuff is true, because obviously it's classified information, and we don't know if anything was admonished. But just everything about this movie screams special. The last 30 minutes are so good between going onto the compound and all of the build up to get there, and then the way they treat SEAL Team 6, they're not treated as these badass guys that can just go in and do everything. Like, they actually, in those scenes, make mistakes. Like, they don't make it like they knew exactly what they were doing the whole time. Like, a chopper even falls into the compound and potentially alerts the people in the compound, like, hey, somebody's here. And when you open up the compound, they end up shooting people that could potentially have been innocent. We don't know. And man, it is so tense. It is so scary, and there's no music in the background. It's completely silent, and every time a gun goes off, it's not like, oh, cool, there's a gun going off. It's more like they're pulling the trigger because they have to. Not because they want.
It's not glamorized, is what you're trying to say. It's like, again, I think that goes back to what you're saying, is that it's very real. It almost feels like a documentary in a way.
I like to focus on probably what Kurt was talking about earlier with the helicopter crash. I felt a tightening grip on my stomach when that helicopter crashed, because that scene was just so gritty. And to see and to see the I think it was Joel Edgerton's character who was about to get sucked out of the helicopter or whatever, just to see that happen, and just to like Kurt was saying, there's no music. Like, there's no music during the scene, and there's no typical funky movie action gun, going off. It sounds, everything sounds and looks and feels so realistic, and just that whole last 30 minutes of that movie, I was just like this. I was just, because there was nothing I could say. There were, I mean, it was just so gritty, and like, there's a lot of it goes back to where the SEAL team is actually walking to get on the helicopter, which was one of the scenes that they used in the previews, was when, the SEAL team was walking to get on the helicopter to go to the compound. And the actors, if you pay close attention, they do such a great job of having the expressions on their face of uncertainty. Like, in the preview, when I saw the preview, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be an action flick about the SEAL team and how they went in and just decimated Osama bin Laden, and they took down the compound, and basically that we were the hunter at the end with our foot on the game prize. But that's not it. When they show it in the preview, it's like, well, there goes a couple badasses. In the movie, when you see them walking to the helicopter, it's like, man, these are some guys who are walking into uncertainty. And everyone around in the film was just so uncertain about whether or not they were even doing the right thing of going to the compound, because they really didn't even know if Osama bin Laden was really there. Yeah. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie was where the man was talking to the White House executives, and he was like, we're not sure who's in the compound, but we know what he does, and we know that he does this, and we know that he does this, and we know that when he comes out to get fresh air, he stands under the grapevines, thick grapevines that you can't see through, and then he goes directly back inside, and he has no internet access, and his only contact to the outside world is this guy who is quote-unquote a ghost, a disappeared, a fake person, a person who's supposedly been dead for years. And just the movie as a whole, it just overtakes you, it really does, because it's an emotional ride. It really is. But yeah, man, it's a must watch.
Yeah, and I think I have to agree with you guys. But just one thing I wanted to mention. I don't know if you guys agree with me here, but this movie kind of feels like a procedural, kind of like one of those procedural dramas that you see, those hour-long procedural dramas you see on TV, but kind of stretched out to this 10-year, 12-year-long manhunt. And I found that kind of refreshing, because it's nothing I've really seen before, to the extent. I mean, but at the same time, that kind of format really does help to aid the film, because I don't know about you guys, but even though this is a 2.5-hour movie, I didn't really feel the runtime. But I mean, at the same time, I did, and I'll save that for a second. But I mean, you don't really feel it, because you know what's coming, but you're just so invested in the story and kind of seeing what happened, and you're invested in Jessica Chastain's character, who we can talk about in a minute. But what I mean by going back to that point a minute ago, what I mean by kind of feeling the runtime is this whole manhunt kind of really put its toll on the character, on Jessica Chastain's character in this movie. And I think that really that kind of translating to the film, where the audience kind of is in her shoes, and you really start to feel the desperate nature that we're going to get this guy, and that it takes years and years and years. I think that really helps, because it's a big, like you said, Tommy, it's a big payoff when you get to that moment, and but even more than the infiltration scene with the SEALs and everything, I find the scene after that closes the movie far more powerful. And Catherine Bigelow, Catherine Bigelow is someone who's really good at creating pretty poignant endings. I mean, even back to Point Break, that movie has a pretty awesome ending. And one that kind of is a character kind of moment at the end, but the scene when you see Jessica Chastain and she looks at the body and then she just kind of walks outside and she just stares, you know? I mean, she's not saying anything, she's not going over the top, but it's just one of the most powerful moments. And again, this is the type of thing that happens with her is she has great endings that really kind of in a way are the thesis of the movie. I mean, you even look back to the Hurt Locker, and that movie ends on the shot of Jeremy Renner's character going back to war, and really that shot says everything. In one shot, it's everything that the movie's trying to say. You know, it's about a war junkie, it's about a war addict, and I think the same thing applies here. But I mean, it's one of those things where I kind of almost feel bad for Jessica Chastain's character in the end because she's dedicated her whole life to this. She's sacrificed everything, her personal life, her friends, all these things to catch this guy, and then, it's like doing something for 10 years and then you finish it and you're like, wow, so what do I do now? I know you would probably feel kind of lost after something like that. And I think that last shot really conveys that sense, like that this character's journey is completed, but at the same time it's consumed her and she doesn't know where to go after this, she doesn't know what to do. And I find that aspect, that last shot, a little bit to that, but I mean, it's one of those things where you can take it a lot of different ways, and that's I really like endings that have multiple interpretations. But I don't know. That's for me. That's something a little more again subtextual. It's kind of not really at face value type of thing. But
there was going on to what you were saying about that. There was one scene in particular right before, they go out to talk to the SEAL team and everything, where she's sitting downstairs in, I guess, in Washington in the CIA headquarters, and she's sitting downstairs and, excuse me, and she's eating, and James Gandolfini comes down and he looks at her and he's like, you mind if I sit down with you, and he pulls a chair out and he sits down with her and he's just asking her about the food, kind of making this small talk, and then he kind of drops this big bomb of a question, but it's so subtle. He goes, how long have you been with the CIA? And, she says, well, I've been here for 7 years. And he asked her, he was like, well, what all have you done since you've been here in this 7 years? And she kind of stops everything that she's doing. Like, she literally just, she just stops and she looks at him. And I guess he's kind of expecting this kind of, well, I did this and I did this and I've earned the right to be on this big project. And then all she says is this. This is it. This is all I've done. And, that kind of goes back to what you were saying with the ending of the film, because it kind of is. It's like, this is all she has done. And now it's ended, and she's kind of stuck with just going back and trying to figure out what she has to do now. But, the ending shot of her crying at the end on the plane when they're taking off, it kind of, embodies the movie as a whole because, you yourself, if you really get caught up in the movie like I did, you're stuck with this feeling of, wow, what can I see now that could possibly, what could I see or what could I watch that could possibly take the place of this, because it's just, as a whole, it's something incredible. But
yeah. Well, just to go off that a little bit, real quick here, I think this movie also, and going back to like the pace and the runtime of the movie, I think it does a pretty darn good job of truncating like all these events into a manageable movie. I mean, there's a lot of things that happened, and there's probably a lot of people that were involved in this thing, and I'm sure some things were done to kind of combine and amalgamate characters, but I just thought it was it did a really good job of kind of telling all these events in a really organized and succinct kind of way, But Kurt, do you have any thoughts on this stuff?
Yeah, I really like the little subtle things that Jessica Chastain has to perform in the movie, and I think that's what kind of elevates a performance at times. The little subtle characteristics that your character has, like the little Like, she has a little idiosyncrasies. Like, sometimes she just won't look at certain people in the face because she doesn't like the roadblocks that will be thrown her way by these people. And, like, she's such an unbearable character to most people in the movie because she wants to get this job done. And everyone else is just like, well, we're not going to find him, so what's the problem? And, like, I think there's this really awesome scene in the middle of the film where her boss gets fired. And she has to call in for a bunch of vehicles. And this new guy that gets put on the job, like, instantly just calls these people in. And he kind of, like, plays it off like, oh, whatever, I'm going to do it. And then she's like, are you going to do it now or are you going to do it later? And he's just like, I'll do it when I get my time, and I'll get it done, because as I've learned from my predecessor, if I don't do what you tell me to do, then I'm fired. And I really like that, because it's like the only funny part of the movie. It's like, you can finally see how powerful this character is, even though she isn't a lead person. She's like the lead of the project, but she doesn't really pull the strings. But her passion just makes all these things happen.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. I think it's I'm pretty surprised that Jennifer Lawrence beat out Jessica Chastain for the Oscar, man, because I mean, I hadn't even seen the movie at that point, and I knew she had locked it up, you know, because I just heard her performance in this was amazing, you know, and obviously we think it is. But I don't know, man. What did you guys think about the actors who played the SEAL team? I know you liked Joel Edgerton in the movie, Tommy.
Oh yeah. Oh, I just you know, even though the SEAL team didn't have a lot of time in the film, they really didn't. You know, it's the last 30 minutes of the film basically is what they have. You know, you really get a whole of what the SEAL team is just through Joel Edgerton, because I said, I posted in the movie group that while I was watching the movie, I was like, man, Joel Edgerton is just a total badass. And I could kind of feel people like, well, you know, there was just that one final scene, you know, he wasn't like going through the whole movie just annihilating people, but, you know, the last scenes that he was in, he really captured the SEAL team, and, you know, just everything that he went through with the helicopter, and, you know, the door jamming, and he had to go and blow it off, and, you know, all the stuff that was going on outside, and he was this really focused and centerpiece of the whole SEAL team, you know, and he's trying to conduct stuff that's going on outside when all the people are coming over to the compound, and they're armed, and like they're coming, and the soldiers are screaming at him at the megaphone, and you know, he's trying to handle everything that's going on inside with, you know, people sneaking around. And, you know, what Kurt was saying with it being like really terrifying, there were a few parts where, you know, they do this thing to where, Catherine Bigelow had it to where, you know, there was the real time camera, and then there was the night vision camera, and, you know, you get through the perspective of the SEAL team. And, you know, probably one of the most intense scenes in that last little 30 minutes was where the guy runs up the stairs, and Joel Edgerton sees him, and he, like, stops in the stairwell, and, you know, he doesn't really know what to do, you know, even though he's, like, he's the SEAL leader, and, you know, he's just sitting there, and he's like, Osama? You know, that's all he's saying, because he's kind of stuck on the fact that he might actually have the chance to take him down. And then, you know, he guns the guy down in the stairs, which that was really intense. And then just getting to where he actually does shoot Osama, and it's on total, complete accident. You know, he just shot on sheer just emotion. Just as soon as he walked in, he just fired the gun, because he was so used to just seeing, you know, not knowing who was around the corner next for him, you know, and one of the other actors who was in the SEAL team with him says, Patrick, do you realize what you've done?
Yeah.
You know, have you realized, do you realize what you just did?
Yeah, that's what Joel Edgerton says to the guy who shot him, and that's what I was going to point out, man. Like, Joel Edgerton's acting in that moment in particular is just brilliant, because it's the camera's positioned where Osama's on the floor, and the guy that shot him, the camera's facing his back. So all you see is Joel Edgerton's face, and just
Yeah.
the sheer look on his face, like it's almost a look of disbelief, of shock.
Yeah.
And then he says that, and I think he does a really good job because he kind of has to convey what the other actor's doing the same time he's doing it, you know. So Kurt, what did you think about the SEALs?
I thought they were fantastic, and my favorite thing about the SEALs is they don't like. Sure, there's like 2 or 3 that are obviously bigger than the rest, but they all kind of have their own moments. Like they give a lot of secondary SEALs moments where they'll break through doors, and they're equally as terrifying as all the other guys of what they're going through. And like my favorite moment with the SEALs too is like at the end. It has nothing to do with the compound even. Like they have the Iraqi translator soldier that, and like they notice because the chopper falls down. Like there's a whole section next to the compound that just wakes up and realizes, hey, there's American forces here, and they're like causing this uproar in the streets.
Yeah.
And the Iraqi translator has to translate a statement to these people like, hey, you're going to back off or you're going to get shot.
Yeah.
And it's one of those terrifying moments where you're thinking, man, we might actually have to kill a bunch of innocent people because they're going to sabotage this potentially big plan that we don't even know if he's even here. And I love that scene. And everything about these SEAL Team 6 guys are awesome. Like, they're not treated like they're badasses. They're treated like people who are doing their job, which is what I tend to hate about a lot of films about the Army, is that they treat them like they're these badasses who turn out guns and shoot people. But they do a job. It's just like anybody else. They do it clinically, and they're professional about it. It's not like, oh, look, we're cool, we shoot guns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to also say something else is you really get a whole of how they work together, because when one guy's standing at the door, the other one's tapping him on the shoulder to give him the okay. When they're trying to blow the door off, the other guy's handing him the tool to do it with. You know, they're working hand in hand, and they really did good with the acting too, because they all really hand in hand. You know, with the two outside with the translator, and you know the guy who's just sitting there saying, if you don't tell him to back off, I'm going to gun him down. He's like, I'm dead serious. You know, and the translator, he was actually one of my favorite SEALs, or one of my favorite people in that situation, because he kind of sees it as like, well, wait a minute, this is my people, because he's looking at them and he's shouting into this megaphone, and he's like, this, you know, he kind of realizes that this is his people, and that in some right, you know, he's going to try and defend them too, you know, but he doesn't want to see anybody get killed, but he knows that he's there to do his job as well, you know, and I just, you know, when he finally, like, drops the megaphone and he runs over there and he's like, if you go home, he won't kill you. If you just go home, he won't kill you. You know, and it's just, you know, the whole thing was just so serious. And, you know, I really liked how they all just really worked hand in hand. And, you know,
Yeah.
the actors took it at a professional level of, you know, of really capturing everything that it needed to be. So
Yeah, but more importantly than that, I think you know, kind of going off what we've been talking about here with the acting, this is really pretty good ensemble cast. You know, there's a lot of bit parts in this movie that are pretty well cast, because with Jessica Chastain as the main character, you kind of have to have these bit players for her to kind of play off of. And that's one of the things that I found really interesting about the movie, is how the kind of interactions that these characters have with the Jessica Chastain character kind of shape her and kind of determine the type of person that she is at the end. And I think that's really important, because, you know, this movie has a clearly defined character. But just to name check a few of the cast here, we mentioned Joel Edgerton as the main SEAL. You also have Chris Pratt in there, who I really enjoyed. For those of you that don't know, he's on a little show called Parks and Recreation, which is a comedy show. He's also in some other comedy movies. So it was kind of nice to see him step out of his comfort zone and try to do a real dramatic role. We've got Mark Strong in here. We've got Kyle Chandler in here. We got a small part from Mark Duplass, which I absolutely love because there's another comedian in there. And of course, we mentioned James Gandolfini. And I'm only reading. There's about 20 on the list here, so those are the more notable ones. But what did you guys think about all the bit players in this movie? Kurt, go ahead, and then we'll go to you, Tommy, after that.
The bit players are outstanding here. They like most movies have a lot of small minor characters that really they have scenes that don't really matter much. They're just kind of like pushovers to get to the next scene. This one, they actually make them strong characters, even if they're only on screen for 5 minutes or so. I'm trying to think. I don't know what it might have been Mark Strong's character. Is he the head of the CIA in this movie?
It doesn't say. His name is his character's name is George.
He was the guy who I think Jessica Chastain walked to and was like writing the number on the days on his office window and kept circling them.
Okay, no, here it says
he was one of my favorite characters in the movie.
It says James Gandolfini as CIA director, so I'd take him as the head of the CIA.
I really like Mark Strong.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
I really
Mark
like
Strong
Mark Strong
was really
because he has that great scene in the middle of the film where I guess Jessica Chastain's partner in this manhunt, she gets killed by the car bomber, the Dr. Car Bomber, and like right after that scene, you see Jessica Chastain, and she's like, "Man, I need a drink. This is a bad night." And the next day, Mark Strong comes in the room, and he's with all of these people. They're on this project, and he just has this powerful moment where he's just like, "We have spent more than $3 billion to track down this guy, and what have we gotten? 9 of our friends dead. There is nothing that has been done. We need to get moving on this." And it is so terrifying when he says that. You feel this force of just hatred for Osama bin Laden and all of this work that they've done for absolutely nothing. And I really like that moment. But even James Gandolfini is outstanding here. Just a whole lot of awesome acting all around here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, and going back to that point, I just want to, because it actually reminded me of this, and going back to the ending, of course, too, is one of the theses of the film, if you will, is, for me at least, was it all worth it? Was this manhunt really worth all the manpower and all the torturing and all the death? And again, it kind of goes back to that character of Jessica Chastain, that last shot, you know. And you can tell this character's got all these things going on, and she's really asking herself that same question. I mean, even though it's never said, I think it's, at least from the performance of Chastain, is that you can kind of tell that she's thinking these things, you know. And I think Catherine Bigelow is asking the audience the same question, you know. And it's those kind of underlying things that really get me excited and that really want to make me go back and watch it again, you know, and see more of the nuances, like you were saying, Tommy, and the complexities of the performances and just the way that the movie's put together, you know. So I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but I just thought that was one of the more interesting things I thought about the movie. So.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've really embodied this whole thing. It's just, it's kind of making me want to. I still have it. Like, if I didn't have to get up early, I would probably revisit it right now. Just because it was. It was.
You just
so
need to
great.
buy it. You just need to buy it. I bought it on Blu-ray, man, and I'm so glad I did, because I'm probably going to return to it. As taxing as the movie is, you know, like as long as it feels, it's just. I mean, there's certain, like, at the end, there's just certain points where. What I mean by this is, like, the tension just goes on for so long, you know, that it's really hard to watch this movie, you know, 2 or 3 times in the same week, because I've already seen it like 3 or 4, you know, and it's just one of those ones that really takes its toll on you, just because it's such a tense movie, you know. But I don't know, I really love it.
A lot of movies, you know, kind of a lot of movies say that they want to take you on this emotional roller coaster, one that'll have your emotions going up and down and up and down and up and down. You know, Zero Dark 30 does not do that. It takes your emotions and then it stretches your emotions. It doesn't send them up and down. It just keeps stretching your emotions, you know, and until it just finally, and the good thing is when it gets to that end point, it doesn't pop you. It doesn't pull you apart, you know, and it doesn't let you down. It just lets you, it just slowly lets you, it snaps you back, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it just, it lets you, with the ending, you know, they give you a good 5 minutes of just taking everything in that you just really all consumed.
Yeah.
But going back to the characters, I'm not really sure who the actor's name is, but the guy who started off torturing people at the beginning of the film, what was that actor's name? I cannot think of it for the life of me. But he plays just this really just down and dirty and just gritty guy, and you know, you kind of get a hold of him. You kind of get a hold of him when he's sitting outside of his monkey cages, and he's just kind of looking at this empty cage, and he's like, you know, they took my monkeys, and it's kind of at that point to where, you know, it's kind of strange, but those monkeys were all that he really had, and he was like, you know, I'm done. I'm going back to Washington. I'm getting a desk job. And then the next time you see his character, you know, which is very few and far between after that, because he starts off being one of the main characters, and then he kind of just goes into these obscure little, you know, he'll show up in obscure little places, and then he kind of comes back towards the middle of the film where he pays the guy off with the Ferrari or whatever, the car, and but to begin with, you know, just to see a guy like this, you know, he's the janitor for the CIA basically, because he's just doing all this down and dirty work for them. You know, he's in there torturing these guys, and you know, after he tortures this guy nearly to death, he basically like lies to the guy and gives him food, and you know, he's making all these jokes like him and this guy were best friends, the guy who he just got done, you know, waterboarding and kicking the crap out of, and you know, doing these payoffs, and you know, getting these connections, and then you kind of just see him, and he doesn't, you know, it's kind of like the next time you see him when he's all clean cut and in his suit, he kind of just doesn't fit in anymore, you know, you kind of lose sight of who he was, and then you see him again later on, and he does that deal with the car, and you know, he was one of my favorite characters as well. And the scene where they first do the where he introduces Jessica Chastain to all the people who he's working with, and you know, he's talking to him like it's just another day at the job, you know, he's talking to him like they're at the bar, you know, we got to do this, and you know, who fucking cares about that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, he kind of embodies this this down and dirty guy that the CIA had working for him. And then it kind of put an end to his character when they said, you know, when they did the news report that, you know, the U.S. never and had been or never will be torturing anybody to gain information or anything like that. And you kind of know that puts an end to his character, because, you know, it's like everything that he was doing and stood for just got put on hold or put a stamp on it and just sent him off to Washington, you know, which was his choice, but at the same time, it was just, he put on a really good performance as well. So
okay, so I think that's going to be good. Kurt, what would you give this movie as far as a rating?
I would give this film a perfect 10 out of 10.
All right. Tommy?
Perfect 10 out of 10. Just, yeah, 2 thumbs up, 2 thumbs way up.
Yeah.
If I wish I had more hands so I could have more thumbs.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. This movie is really great. It's really hard for me to give a movie a 10 out of 10. So I'm going to go with a 9.8 on this one. I just don't think any movie's perfect.
Oh, come on.
No, dude, sorry, I can't. Hey, come on. I didn't even give The Thing a 10 out of 10. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect movie. So, but I think it's really great. I think everybody needs to see it, especially people who kind of grew up in the, you know, during 9/11 and all these events that have happened afterwards. So with that being said, we are going to sign off. Hope everyone has a good night, and we will see you next time.